Transmitting from the Mojave Wilderness in Joshua Tree, California. Now is the time for Desert Oracle Radio, the voice of the desert.
Night has fallen on the desert during that magical time when the cold winter desert becomes an Eden of Wildflowers. We luxuriate in the spring warmth. The birds are just delirious, just like that. It's springtime or almost, way up here in the Mojave Mountains. There's nothing better than the desert in springtime. Most people say that. Up here around Pioneer Town and Pipes Canyon, it's still chilly at night. The mornings, too. A little warmer up in Landers, out in Lucerne Valley. Still cold way up in Lone Pine, after dark anyway. The mountains make the difference. Who said that? I think it was Lee Harvey Oswald. You get close to sea level on the Sonoran Desert, where the Colorado River meets the Sea of Cortez, the Gulf of California. And it's already hot. They've already had highs in the 90s. And then the wind comes in and it's 20 degrees cooler. We are at relatively high elevation up here in the Morongo Basin, outside our famous national park, which was supposed to be called Desert Plants National Monument a century ago, when our blessed desert saint Minerva Hamilton Hoyt convinced one of her rich buddies in FDR's administration to preserve all that government-owned arid land around here and up in Death Valley as national monuments. The desert's answer to Yosemite, to Yellowstone. And all of that is here today and more, all saved as beloved national parks and still some monuments and one preserve, Mojave National Preserve, that bring great joy to millions every year, while providing the economic engine of little desert towns like Joshua Tree, 29 Palms, Shoshone, Beatty, etc. If you're around Yucca Valley, it's just shy of 4,000 feet above sea level in the foothills. You're still around 3,000 feet in elevation in Joshua Tree, the town, the unincorporated town. And consider this, you can go all the way up Mount Whitney in the Sierra Nevada via the Owens Valley desert side, Whitney Portal. You can go all the way up to the peak at 14,505 feet above the Wyandark Sea, the highest peak in the contiguous 48 states. And in short time, once you get down from the peak, you can drive over to the lowest point on the entire continent, which is Badwater in Death Valley, 282 feet below the briny blue, which is safely kept far aside the Great Wall of Mountain that we call the Sierra Nevada, so you don't drown while visiting Death Valley's lowest point. Sierra meaning sawtooth, and Nevada meaning snowy, the snowy Sawtooth Mountains, more or less. And the most beautiful mountains in the world. At high altitude, you live a little bit different. Takes longer for water to boil, takes longer to cook pasta, rice, all those starches we don't really need anyway, do we? The onions never become translucent in 7 minutes, but they never did that anywhere else either. That was part of the big lie, the New York Times food section deception. If the air is clear in your mountain locale, well, your lungs and heart will be especially happy to receive the blessing of daily walking or hiking or biking or horseback riding or cross-country skiing through the natural highway of your choice as appropriate to your bioregional landscape. Because you're getting about 17% less oxygen at 4,000 feet than at sea level. Less air pressure, too, by about 14%. Once you adapt, your body produces more red blood cells to compensate for the decreased oxygen available. In long term, you're going to increase your lung capacity. This is true if you're active, not necessarily if you're not. So get out there and do whatever you do. Run or walk or get on a horse. Lord knows that old horse wants to get out of the corral and explore too. We used to have horses all over the place up here in the high desert. Now I rarely see them on the trails, although there is a nice horse camp at Black Rock Canyon. Just take some Benadryl if the wildflower pollen doesn't agree with you.
Desert Oracle Radio.
But what about the danger? What about the risk? Yes, a bear might eat you on the trail in Montana. A mountain lion might eat you while you're on an early morning run in the Sacramento foothill suburbs. These things happen. Not very often, but they do happen. It makes you feel alive, too. These things happen less when you're more prepared, but they still happen. Life comes and goes, rises and falls for each of us. I'd rather fight it out with a grizzly than die in a hospital. Better yet, scare off the grizz with a couple of blasts from my good old peacemaker, because in this scenario, I am riding a great black horse through someplace like Glacier National Park on a glorious sunny day in June. Snow's still on the ground, but the green meadow coming up fast. That bear knows better than to be hassling people on the main trail. Come on. So if you live around 4,000 feet elevation and on upwards from there, congratulations, only 15% or so of the whole world's population lives above 4,000 feet elevation. That means we are the elite, the elect. Soundscapes by Red, Blue, Black, Silver. You ever try to read a book in a restaurant, at a bar on a quiet afternoon, and the light's all wrong? And the text printing in the book is too faint, is too small, a general decline in the presentation of the written word. I've got old pocket Bibles and pocket U.S. Constitutions with crisp, readable text in a well-printed serif font, usually some minor variation of Times Roman that has been in use since Charlemagne ordered his scribes to use a mutually intelligible, mutually readable, magical font now known as Carolinian minuscule, which came back in the Renaissance. And it's the sort of font we most often use today in business correspondence and in printed periodicals. Times Roman is the common version we still use today. So you're having trouble seeing the page, and it is for sure the fault of the lighting, the maddening invisible pulse of the LEDs, not your own vision naturally declining a bit over the many decades. But you see people struggling with reading glasses and those little lights that clip on the top of the book, or the candles we keep in our dark candlelit occult libraries within the menacing stone towers on the stark desert slopes. Then also at the Red Lobster or wherever we're eating these days on the interstates. But sometimes we just say, oh, to hell with it, and pull out the phone, which has adjustable brightness and crisp text and the Kindle reader, and oh, who cares? Let's check the gram, the IG, the imbecile gram. And all right, so nobody human posts there anymore. Let's try the Facebook. Lots of unwanted pit bulls and yard sale announcements. People just finding out about the news from January, and onward we go. And then we'll switch over to Twitter and catch up on the war. I did finally finish the Charlemagne book I was trying to read. At lunch, down in the low desert. And this part struck me as being an apt description of the Daniel Boone type of Western pioneers who spread across the American wilderness, starting even before the Revolutionary War, but really picking up by the 1790s. That's how my own family got to eastern Kentucky from the Blue Ridge side. They wound up in Floyd County on the Big Sandy River. William Wagner Lane and James Shannon Lane and their families and their animals crossed through the gap with old Daniel Boone himself. He did that to make money, he'd take people through. He had to make a living too. Anyway, this is from Charlemagne, The Legend and the Man by Harold Lamb. It's from the 1950s, a previous century. The ancestors of the Franks had been handy with axes. Their broad-bladed axes served them well to hurl at an enemy or to clear forest. Like their kinsmen, the Danes and the Norse, these pioneer Franks could turn a strip of forest into a tillable field and build a house with a smoke hole in the roof and a beaten clay floor between the spring thaw and the autumn frost. Naturally, they sought the rich soil of riverbanks adjacent to the easily traveled highway of the water, which supplied them with fish to be salted and dried for winter food. Using axes, they put together skiffs and chloracles of dried hides readily enough. From Roman ruins, they obtained bricks, iron, joint bars, and possibly some lead pipe. A freeman's house sheltered his cows, pigs, and watchdog. And if he were wealthy, his horse. His wife, if she were clever, might add woven wall hangings and white linen to their furnishings of cooking pots and spits, and the hand-hewed table and bed. Being in so far self-sufficient, this free man usually liked his farm to be independent of others. By his own river, his own oak grove. He was quite willing to walk several leagues with his family to the neighboring village to drink ale at a fair or a saint's festival, to buy his wife a mantle clasp, or to take her to communion. By Charlemagne's time, this typical Frank was in the way of becoming a farmer more than a warrior. He clung stubbornly, however, to his inalienable right to speak in a lawsuit, to drink more than his fill, and to keep his property for his sons. Urban life appeared, to his independent spirit, to be voluntary imprisonment. On a recent episode, we were commemorating what would have been Edward Abbey's 99th birthday. Edward Abbey being the long-gone desert writer of such classics as Desert Solitaire. So Ed wasn't around for the party. He died 3.5 decades ago, and there wasn't a party anyway. You might find a paperback of Desert Solitaire with a nice stock photo of a desert landscape on the cover in your Airbnb or at the gift shop in the national park. Mostly in hopes you won't actually read it, just buy it. Abbey wrote many other books, the comic novel The Monkey Wrench Gang being his other lasting classic, a fast-paced adventure in the Butch and Sundance style. Madcap. And this year marks the 50th anniversary of that book. It's about these doomed romantics who get in over their heads and pay the price. A book that is little read in environmental circles today, mostly because few people read books anymore, but also because it's funny and vulgar and full of very human characters who do not represent the best of their gender, race, faith, or anything else. But they sure are good company, which is all we really care about unless we're terminally online, unless we're bores. And they truly love their homeland, the American Southwest, especially the colorful deserts and canyons and rivers and mountains of New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah. Doc Sarvis, Bonnie Abzug, Seldom Seen Smith, and George Washington Hayduke. What a gang. Like other desert-loving teenage delinquents of that era, I longed for a gang of such wit and foolhardy bravery. I longed for secret missions and campfire oaths. I'd mostly grown out of such romantic and doomed situations, mostly when I started seeing those newspaper reports about various members of Earth First being shanghaied into federal terrorism conspiracies. Old Cactus Ed died around then at the end of the 1980s, taken by some chronic internal bleeding illness that was never well understood, often misdiagnosed. He was gone 6 weeks after his 62nd birthday, buried in an outlaw's grave somewhere along the southern border in an Arizona desert preserve. Gone but not forgotten, as they say. To my mind, Edward Abbey is on the verge of a revival. And Abby offers a lot more than that paperback copy of Desert Solitaire in the gift shop. And more than the Monkey Wrench Gang, the comic masterpiece from 50 years ago. I'm especially fond of some of his 1980s collections. One Life at a Time, Please, published in 1988, the year before his death, is very relevant in the 2020s. The novel A Fool's Progress, also a later work, may not be a very good instruction manual for a life, but it's the kind of life a lot of us were headed for anyway. Those of us who love that book. His fat masterpiece, as he called it. Ed Abbey was a sensitive young man wandering the world with his tattered Schopenhauer and Nietzsche paperbacks, moodily riding his army motorcycle on patrol through post-World War II Italy, brooding from Forest Service fire lookouts, restless, romantic, unsatisfied, ever on the move, ever on the run. And that covers both of the Ed Abbey related anniversaries of this year, 2026. May the desert mystics and hillbilly homesteaders still remember you a century from now. Where will you be in the years to come? Will you be remembered? I hope so. And remembered for good reasons, too. Fondly remembered. Where will you be in 20 and 30, which is only 44 months from now? I'll be glad to be around if that's how it goes. Can't worry about it too much. It is written that the greatest warriors really live every day as if it was their last. What about desert radio broadcasters? What about underemployed philosophers who refuse to get out of the hot springs and do some productive Zoom meetings or something? I've never fought in a war, to my regret. I've done some scattered wartime reporting here and there, Balkans, Central Europe. Gotten close enough to feel both the excitement and the long stretches of boredom. I've spent long, weird nights in UN compounds, press rooms in various foreign capitals as the fighting breaks out. Years covering stateside military bases, pageants, press release events, the thrilling return of the troops to Camp Pendleton after the first Iraq War, the Gulf War of 1991. That's how writers used to make it big. They would make their breakout book about their wartime experiences. Hemingway, Norman Mailer, Vonnegut, Orwell, Tolkien, Robert Heinlein. Well, I'm probably not gonna be able to follow that routine. There comes a time in your life when you have to acknowledge you're probably not going to be going to the front lines. Although the mighty pagan King Penda of Mercia, last pagan king of England, ended his long reign on the battlefield when he was supposedly 80 years old. One last glorious battle. And then his enemies cut off his head, so it goes. But we're a military town out here. The big Marine Corps base, one of the largest in the world. So we'll cheer him on like we cheer on the USA hockey team. Why not? From Amboy to Zzyzx and across the great Mojave wilderness, this is Desert Oracle Radio, broadcasting from KCDZ-FM 107.7 in the high desert. Friday nights at 10 p.m. Or listen on your phone, on the computer. When people tell me they listen on their enormous TV sets, they talk to the TV set and it plays an episode of the radio show. It's like something from a dystopian science fiction movie in the 1960s. I think French New Wave, maybe? Forbidden Planet? I went down to the post office to pick up the mail, and there was a strange little package, like a packet, made of folded brown paper bag, and I was thinking, what is this? A chocolate bar? A Willy Wonka bar? Some kind of trick? You gotta be careful. People mail a lot of weird things. And then I see the handwritten return address says, in loving memory of Ray Barnes and his pals at the Virginian, long live the desert rats. And inside it's a stack of $2 bills. Enough to take your girl out to dinner on Friday night, enough to get a new pair of boots. And besides that, they're all handsome new Thomas Jefferson $2 bills direct from the U.S. Bureau of Printing and Engraving. Very kind, much appreciated, and I'm thinking Ray Barnes. That sounds familiar. I look up the name, and there was a Danny Ray Barnes who passed away 2 years ago. If you ever had lunch on the patio of Country Kitchen in Joshua Tree, he used to play guitar and sing out there, doing lots of crowd pleasers. I don't know if this is the same Ray Barnes, so I won't say more, except that this episode is in memory of Ray Barnes and his desert rat friends at the Virginian, right there in downtown 29. I've been there many times. Thanks to Red, Blue, Black, Silver for the soundscapes. You can support this radio show and podcast at desertoracle.com and patreon.com Desert Oracle. It's getting windy again. Bring in your patio chairs before they blow away. Good night from the voice of the desert.